always start with the date prepared. Why? Because it's the first thing in the form that's right at the top. So when you're getting ready to write the form, that's the first thing you fill in. So if I was going to write an offer today, and this is old news, this deal closed escrow a while back. Today's always like some other color. There it is. So I'd write November 6th up there, because today's the 6th, and I'd start writing and all that stuff. But I have a habit, I guess I'll call it, of if I'm writing the offer and then something happens and I'm talking to the people and then you go, oh, Brittany had to go to the doctor or something, we're not gonna even read it till tomorrow. All right, fine, I'll just send it. I won't even send it to you. You know, for whatever reason, I might not send it to them today. So if I'm gonna send it to them tomorrow, I'll go back in and change that number. I'll just change it to tomorrow. It's not critical, but I think the contracts make more sense if that number's a little closer to at least the day they actually sign the offer. It doesn't have to be. Like we've talked a million times, it's basically a reference date. So when you're gonna counter the offer, you counter the offer dated whatever the date prepared was. So you're the listing agent, buyer's offer offer comes in, and your guy wants to counter it in a couple of days, and it says this is a counter offer to the purchase agreement dated blank. It's that date up in the top left corner, which finally ended all the fights the agents were having. Because there was a date in the top left corner, and then there was a signing date. And they go, well, we didn't have an offer until they signed it. So CAR, like they did with 2 or 3 things, finally they're starting to understand agents. Like, don't let them think. And don't give them extra stuff to think about, because they're going to get just like, that's all they're going to talk about. Instead of negotiating the deal, they're going to go, you put the wrong date in there. Stupid. Dan Bartley and I went, hi Dan, in Oklahoma or Kansas or wherever you're at now. Nice to see you, in case you see this. I won, in case you see that, yeah. Date prepared, that's the one we use. Because I had the inside track, I was still going to the meeting. CAR said, use the date prepared, that's what we want. Came home, started doing it. For reference. This is an addendum to the whatever dated so-and-so. Now the thing you gotta watch when you're like me, I learned the hard way, you go back in, like nothing happens with this offer for 2 or 3 days. So I go back in about the time I'm gonna send it to get signed, I've made my corrections, whatever we've been talking, blah, 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 I'm ready to go. I'll go up there and change that date prepared to today. There's some other dates that should say the same, that should have, the other date lines should have the same date on them, like the buyer's information advisory or whatever is tagged onto the back of this thing.
EIA, the wire fraud, all of those.
Where'd you go, buddy?
Right there.
Oh, well, they helped me with that, didn't, there's no date on it anymore.
Right, but the wire fraud, I think, has.
Yeah, isn't there other stuff that has
The-
dates? The
the-
date, so the point was the date won't
agency
change.
disclosure.
Now you date those all by hand, look at those. So if you run into a form,
None of them?
maybe it's a seller's. Anyway, there's a form every once in a while in this pile that'll have a date up usually on the top of page 2. So this thing will be all dated 11/06, and the top of page 2 of the seller's advisory or whatever the hell one of those forms I can't remember right now is, it'll say like last October or whenever you started pulling. So just make sure you spin that scroll wheel and let those forms zoom by and catch those dates and make them match. It's kind of a peeve. And they'll be at the top of every one.
You need a button like they have for all the NAs and everything else.
There used to be, or on the, there still is, on the desktop version, there's radio buttons. You can go next page, last page, next form. I don't know why they're not on here. Because if you want to, and then there's a drop down, it's like, well, I need to look at page 12. 12, pop, boom, page 12. That desktop version is not terrible, I'm just saying. And if your internet goes down, but the power is still on, the power's probably going to go off too, you can use that desktop version.
I've never used the desktop version. How do I get it?
You probably did, like years ago.
Yeah,
You
a
just
long
kind of
time
forgot.
ago. How do I get it?
So you go to
again?
car.org, and then where all the Zipforms live, there will be the hell do they call this? Not Zipform 6, Zipform. It's got like a catchy internet kind of name. and the other one is Zipform Standard. And that's the one that is resident software on your desktop. Now the trouble with it, and we've had this talk before, we'll have it again, the one that's resident software on your desktop or your laptop or your, I guess that's about it.
Right.
The internet stuff, by virtue of pulling everything from servers that somebody else is managing, is always up to date. The desktop's top version, the standard version, you are the server.
Okay.
So every time you open that, it's gonna go, I don't know if I'm up to date or not. You gotta push the update button. There'll be update forms, update library, update this. It takes about 90 seconds. It'll update the whole thing, software and all. I wind up doing that almost every time I go in there. And then there's a synchronization function. So you go on the desktop, and there's 3 choices, like never sync, sync when you open it, always sync. So I just tell it to always sync. So my desktop always matches my internet version, my version you guys are used to, Zipforms Plus, that's what they call it, used to use it. So when you go into the desktop version, the non-internet resident software version, and you open a file, the last change you made online in that file will be there if you sync it. And that way, kinda, to a certain extent, you got your stuff backed up.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay. That's,
To a certain extent, you got your Zipforms forms backed up. The whole issue for me, and the only thing I don't like about the desktop version, the standard version, the resident version, is it doesn't have what we used to call Zip Vault. This thing stores PDFs, the other one doesn't.
yeah.
So you gotta have somewhere else to put the PDFs, but at least your transaction didn't just go away and die. It's sitting in your standard version. Now that was really cool when I somehow accidentally, and CAR helped, they did a huge website, Zipforms update, and I probably drank wine or something. These 2 things happened at the same time on the same day, and I don't know how many 100 files I have in there, but I lost 300 of them. They just like went away. I went, the next time I opened it to look, it always opens up a stream of files, just like if I went back to the file part, now there'd be a crap ton of addresses there. There were 2. Wait a minute, this can't be right. I must have changed the status or something. Nah, they were gone. Took like a month to get them back, and I didn't get very many of the PDFs back either. You know where you're not on camera, you didn't sign the release. Welcome aboard. Now that we've done all that. Q. So, contract law, there's stuff that makes a contract, right? Generally speaking, 4 elements. I don't remember what any of them are. Offer and acceptance, something, consideration, I don't know, legality of object. Anyway, there's stuff you need to contract to make a contract. And it's funny how these contracts are, this one is, what is this thing, like 10 or 11 pages now? The meat of it's in paragraph 1. This is an offer from buyers for the real property. Real property to be acquired is described right there, and it's described, you know, in some detail. Street address, town, county, why is the town in there twice? I don't know. Zip code, even the assessor's parcel number, right? Where do we get those assessor's parcel numbers, generally speaking? Like if this is not my listing and I'm gonna write an offer, where's the easiest place?
Realist tax record.
You go to Realist and look it up and get it, right, if it ain't there, but theoretically, when you do MLS Connect
Yeah.
and you pull that property file, I guess you could call it, into your Zipforms, it'll bring that assessor's parcel number with it. Do I check them? Yeah.
Yeah.
And why? Why is it, and we've had this talk before too, I really feel like I need a raise. As soon as I
Because
get
it's
more
not
money, I'll
always
say
right.
stuff you
Sometimes
haven't
there
heard,
could be
that's
two.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So the assessor's parcel number is really important to, well, to identify the property. It helps like title, right? That's how they make sure they're doing the preliminary title report and all that stuff on the right property. And when Escrow is gonna prorate everything, one of the things you're gonna prorate is the taxes. They need that number to find out what those taxes really are, because it could be like 152 West Chestnut A, B, C, or D, you know, and they're gonna be 4 different tax bills, potentially. And also, there's one other report that the seller's responsible for in a transaction.
NHD.
The NHD. The NHD is finds property by assessor's parcel number, not by address. Which is why it's also important if you have, and it could be you have a property that isn't split or anything, but has more than one assessor's parcel number. You need an NHD for every assessor's parcel number. You guys are actually parodying the lesson. I'm reaching you, grasshopper. Snatch the pebble from my hand. Nothing left to teach you. Okay, cool. So if 152 West Chestnut was say 6 acres or something like that, and it had 4 assessor's parcel numbers, which it could, who knows why? Ours is but to do and die. You need 4 NHDs. Sometimes that's a huge surprise to the listing agent. But all you gotta do is if they only use one assessor's parcel number and Escrow only gets one and the NHD guys only get one, all you gotta do is show them the cover of the NHD report, because it'll have like the whole property will be there on the cover, and the NHD, they outline and highlight the subject of the report. So you'll have like a 6-acre piece, let's say it's an L-shaped piece or something, and it's got 3 or 4 parcels in it, and you can show the listing agent, see how the only thing they highlighted was the toe of the L and not the rest of it. The report doesn't cover the rest of it. You didn't give me a report on the property yet. I need the other 3. It's almost fun when that happens, with the right people. With the wrong people, you have to send them to talk to the NHD company, because they don't give a crap what you think. You know? And you know, who can blame them? Like, they've never been taught, they've never been told. Nobody knows what those numbers even are, why there's 9 digits, what they represent or anything. But it's a huge deal with the NHD. And it's important to get them right. Those fine folks that put listings in the MLS and put 9 zeros in there, that's some kind of a violation or something, but nobody knows unless somebody catches them. Because like I say all the time, Matrix has 8 people monitoring 80,000 agents. Good luck. So, enough about that, I reckon. All right. So we got our buyer and our property, identified a couple of different ways there, then the purchase price and how long it's going to take to make it happen. So pretty much that's the deal, right? Somebody says, hey, did you get an offer on that? Yeah, I got a 544 offer with a 30-day close. The only other thing we're looking for was it cash or not? And that's pretty much the deal in a nutshell. How much money, how fast, where's it coming from? That's about it. Alright. How do you figure out what to put in for how long the escrow is? Anybody got any ideas? We're just gonna spitball that.
How usually?
Yes, the buyer like, how long of an escrow do you want? Do they sometimes know?
No, they just assume like 30 days.
So they assume 30 days? That could be, yeah. Like they assume my 6%. I like it when they do that.
I think it depends.
You get 6, don't you? And 10 for raw land, that's correct.
Depends on financing terms.
Financing, yeah. How fast can the lender go?
Right. Is it cash? How fast can escrow
Yeah, cash.
go?
Why are you taking so long?
Yeah, how fast can escrow go?
Do they have to sell a property? Now everything changes, right? Because we have a 30-day escrow based on a start date of sometime in the future. Yeah, excellent point. I like it. Or when I see something like this, it's $544,000 purchase price, $190,000 down. That's, I don't know what the math is. Probably 20% down, probably 80% financing. It probably shouldn't take forever to do that loan if they got their money and all and everything's ready to go. And sometimes you'll see 60 up there. I'm going to make a phone call. I want to know, like, so is there a reason you guys are dragging your feet? I mean, what's going on? And there's probably a reason. And then you can tell your seller when they go 60, that's crap, we're not doing that. Escrows are always 30 days, like Elizabeth says. You'll hear that. They're out there. Yeah, no, sometimes escrows are not 30 days. Sometimes they're 15. They're all cash, and I'm double ending it at $2.4 million. And I cannot effing wait. That's the longest 15 days of your life. Then right on day 15, 7 attorneys weigh in, and it costs us the entire weekend. Wait till Monday, get my $100,000.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Wow. And you can always change.
I'm crying for you inside.
Pardon?
And they can always change, I mean,
Inside.
they can
Give
always
me that
go on
shot.
extension.
Yeah, if you need an extension or something, you might ask for one. You might get one, but you might not, right? That could happen. So sometimes like, oh, well, they made the offer and like, things happen. The house just came up that they want, and it just happened now, right before they were leaving for Fiji.
Section
So we're
5.
gonna have to just drag it out a little bit. Are you guys okay with that? Oh, well, it's a pretty good excuse. Let's go find out. Ask the seller, like, have you guys ever thought of going on vacation for a couple weeks? Because that's where this deal's going.
Yeah.
Right, so it's kind of an important day. Or time frame. And we all gotta have it right within, because the SBSA actually, that giant 50 million paragraphs advisory thing that they made us start hooking on here about 10 or 15 years ago. There's one paragraph used to be in it that's missing. And it basically said, if you think this thing is gonna close on the day those real estate agents told you it was, you got another thing coming. They took that.
Yeah,
It kind of flew in the face of
Don't
time
hold
is
your
of the
breath.
essence. It's
Yeah.
like time is of the essence.
but
These days mean stuff. Oh, let me just take that. I'm just
You
kidding.
want coffee?
It's a good little
You
tune
want
though.
coffee?
I like that.
Where's my coffee? Probably beat that up. Where did I just leave off? All right, moving right along.
escrow, time is of the essence.
Oh, time is of the essence, kind of flew in the face of the time is of the essence paragraph, which is in the contract, right? Like on about page 9 or 10 or 11, paragraph 29, 30, something like that. It has its own little tiny time is of the essence paragraph. So that's why a lot of times you'll see like within 30 days. And that's, to me, that's who you need to talk to find that out. I was like, talk to the lender, right? When you're writing the offer, it's really great if you can actually get a hold of the lender while you're writing the offer, or right before you write it or something. It's like, so, what are we doing here? How do these guys look? I know what they told me. What do you get to tell me? And let's see that pre-approval, blah, blah, all that stuff. And how fast you gonna make that go? Now, that's all gonna change from right now till about the second week of January, right? How come? Holidays. Holidays are the bane of realtors' existence because they will screw up your timelines every time. They're trying to close on, say, 26th of November, which is probably the day after Thanksgiving or
Actually,
something like
this
that.
year's gonna be before.
Underwriter,
This year's before.
the underwriter
Thanksgiving's the 28th this year.
28th?
Yeah.
All right.
causes all kinds of.
So you wanna
delays.
close on the 29th? You're not gonna. Nobody's gonna be there. Not enough people are gonna be there.
Yeah.
What else happens?
The
I mean, that's hard.
underwriter.
The offices are closed.
Offices are closed, even if they're open.
And
Everybody's
vacation.
leapfrogging vacations. I wrote a cash offer with a 30-day inspection period, could have been a 45-day escrow, right? But I'm putting it together today, theoretically. So everybody in the deal is sophisticated enough to go, oh man, we'll be at this till Christmas, because first the lender will take a week and a half off, then the escrow girls will take turns taking time off, and then the title company will have like a Christmas party, and they won't come to work the next day, and all that crap will happen.
So you're doing
Holidays
30
will
days.
screw up your timeline.
You're doing 30-day inspections?
Yeah, it's a piece of raw land, so the guy's taking it as is, where is, no problem. He's gotta find out everything from, what do I have to do with all the down pine trees, to can I actually use this road for access and build 2 residences? He's got a lot of homework to do. And we figure that there are gonna be days when the county's gonna be so understaffed, he's not gonna get an appointment. And everybody's gonna want an appointment while they're going on vacation, so you're gonna be pushed out, so that's just this time of year, that's just the way it is. That's right. That's just the way it is. And, what's that, there's an axiom about that, conflicts arise when expectations differ. If everybody's thinking things are gonna take longer down, no one is surprised. It's like, hey, everybody gets it, like, the entire frickin' industry is gonna go on vacation, the agent on the other side is taking 2 weeks off. Kids are out of school, I can't work very good right now. I used to have a female business partner that was an avid skier, like steamboat for 2 weeks. Bye. You got this, right? Yeah, totally. It was a shitty 2 weeks. Because no one's there, I can't call the lender because they're with her. You know, they're incredible. All right, so, and now we can see in paragraph 2, the parties each acknowledge, 2A, parties each acknowledge receipt of a disclosure regarding real estate agency relationships. That's one of the reasons that has to be in there, right? The contract has a checkbox that you can't uncheck. It's a legally required form, it's legally required to be in the transaction. And that's the other reason that you gotta get that signed, get it to them, get it signed up front, because it says, after they both signed the contract, it says, yeah, we already got the, right in there, right? PRDS is the same thing. I can't remember where it's at now, but it's in there somewhere. It's right below that. Oh, here it is. There it is, another checkbox you can't uncheck. So that's why that has to be in every transaction you do, because every one of these offers comes with that box checked. You can't uncheck it. So when somebody says, why are you sending me that? That shouldn't ever happen anymore. That form's been around for 10 years. Before that, it was the DA. Remember, we had the AD and the DA, not confusing at all.
Not at all.
You send me an AD or DA or
Yes.
ADD? Or, wait, what? ADHD? It's been around long enough, no one should wonder what that is. But if anybody wonders, like, how come that's in there? Because the contract said so and they can't uncheck the box. You mind getting that signed for me? So agency is kind of an important thing in California. Well, everywhere, I guess, but California, it's like, we do it different, just like everything else. We wrote the book, we rewrote the book. So there's, now I gotta remember the other word. Oh, I have it, finally came back to me, thank you. There's 3 parts of an agency disclosure, and it all takes place in the contract. Basically, all takes place where all those names and crap are in paragraph 2. So the first thing you have to do for the public of the 3 steps in agencies, you have to disclose. So, got that done. Right? Gave them a form. Thank you, State of California, for writing a form. Then we have to elect. So you tell them, here's what a buyer's agent is, here's what a seller's agent is, here's what a dual agent is. And in this transaction, I am a buyer's agent. Go back and read that if you have to. I'll give you a minute. Yes, that's me. I'm a buyer's agent. And you elect by checking the box. Now, why we get to elect for the other agent, I don't know. That's the way the forms are set up. It's like, hey, Scott, you're the agent of the seller, whether you like it or not, because they checked the box. If somebody checked the box wrong, I guess you'd have to counter them. I don't know. So it kind of helps explain the whole agency firm there, agency thing there, because it says in confirmation, which is the third thing, so you disclose, you elect, you disclose, like, here's what the 3 kind of agents are, here's the one I'm going to be, and you confirm them, and we can do it in the contract. Now, 25, 30, maybe 35 years ago, you had to have another form. It was like a half a page called Confirmation of Agency Relationships. That form got lost more than it ever got found because it was half a page. It would just disappear. It was kind of stupid. So they put it in the contract. So you disclose, elect, and confirm. And here you elect and confirm. And then the buyer and seller, by signing, are like they got all the information they need to know what kind of agent you are, what's going on. And this helps explain, I think, too, like we talk about all the time, where the agent is actually the company, right? Whoever the managing broker, right? I guess. No, there's no broker of record. Thank you. Whoever the broker of record is, that's really the principal's agent, and then the realtors, the salespeople, are the agents of the brokerage. So it's all listed up there like that. So Keller Williams Realty Central Coast is actually the seller's agent, and Scott is Keller's agent, thereby through his agency with Keller representing the seller. So now you guys know. You can confuse people with agency stuff. No tomorrow. No questions? Any questions? I shouldn't say no questions. No questions. All right, moving right along. We're halfway to the bottom of the first page halfway through the class. In 12 weeks, we'll be done. This still gets screwed up by people that I know that have been in the business for like 5 years, right? So paragraph 3, finance terms, A, initial deposit, right? Is that the down payment?
No.
No.
It's your earnest money deposit.
Could have been your earnest money, right? They still call it earnest, EMD, right? Earnest money deposit, yeah, they call it the initial deposit in the contract. So when you wanna tell somebody, maybe in a counteroffer or something, you need a bigger deposit, you call it the initial deposit, because the contract has no idea what an EMD is. So you always paraphrase, I guess you could say, the contract. So you don't tell anybody like, your earnest money needs to be more. You can, it's colloquial, it's okay, but that's not right. You want them to, per 3A, change that initial deposit. And what do I always say the initial deposit ought to be? Does anybody know that?
2%.
2%. Why?
Because it's between 1 and 3.
It's between 1 and 3. Yeah. 1's too low,
Threes?
3's the legal limit. It's like, I don't know. How about 2? That's all the science that came in that. How big does it have to be?
It doesn't have to be anything.
It doesn't have to be anything, because you need consideration in the contract, there has to be money in it. That's not it, that doesn't make the contract. That $544,000 makes the contract, not the 10 grand. That can be 0, that is 0 sometimes.
That could be 0 then.
It could be 0.
Oh, I didn't know
If it's 0, will it affect
that. Yeah.
part of the contract later, like liquidated damages? Do we want to see a deposit there? Might be a good idea, right? Because if the buyer like breaches and the seller goes, well, I get to keep the deposit, right? Yes, you already have it. The money you came in here with is the money you're leaving with, because they didn't have one. Agents will bust your chops on you. You don't even have a contract, you don't have a deposit. I beg to differ, my good man Carl. Last guy I had that argument with. Wait, how live is this? There'll be no last names, in fact, we'll just call him Carl. Just busting somebody's chops about, you don't have a contract. You don't have to have anything. Now, if you, did I just write one like that? Where is
With a 0 deposit.
So let's say it's 100% financing, like USDA, VA, something like that. Let's make this, through the magic of computer crap, let's make this a $544,000 VA purchase, and it's 100% finance, no money down, right? But we still want a deposit. Now veterans, for some reason, we love veterans, we let them get away with like $1,000. This is better than nothing, and you know, when the guy is there and got a kid on each knee and all that stuff, and he's probably in fatigues because he's going back Saturday, it's like, if they can put together $1,000, good for them, right? So let's let them get away with $1,000. I don't know why it's 1,010. Does that say 1,000? Okay, cool. And here on our financing, we're gonna go, I'm about to check that box. Can anybody tell me what's gonna happen when I check that box?
Another form.
It's gonna pull in VA, FHA form. Look at you guys. Is that the right box?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks. And the little yellow dialogue box or whatever we call those when I was Casey's age showed up at the top and said, hey, I just put a form in there for you. So it puts one form in. It's actually missing one. There's the FHA VA amendatory clause, and then there's the FHA VA like repair lender repair form that no one uses because it doesn't automatically pull in like it should. Now, what all those guys that are going to Sacramento or where else are doing with their time, I don't know. That should be changed by now. Just saying.
So what's the other form called?
Lender repair form. Lender repair form.
It's something like that. Wow, that guy is really
Wow.
borrowing a lot of money. Better?
Yeah, what's he doing?
So Gary, why doesn't it automatically include that form? That's really
You know,
Doesn't work.
I don't know.
for
It's not used much,
Huh.
and you know, it's not
But
It's
is it
not mandatory, it's not
Oh.
required.
Okay.
The FHA, VA amendatory clause is
Is
required
required.
by law.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately, we get one signed, we'll talk about that for a minute too, right now. We'll get one signed with the offer, and then you'll sign one later for the lender, and then you'll sign another one later for the lender. I don't know why in the hell though, you wind up signing about 3 or 4 of them by the time you get done. We've already signed this, well, for some reason the processor can't find it. Like, I know, right? What do you guys do with these forms? You never get away with one with a lender. I don't know why. You ever find a lender that can get it right once? Like, we probably ought to keep them.
I do,
Right?
I keep copies.
Pay
of this and
attention.
resend them.
Yeah, just, here it is again, thank you. Now, the FHA, well, let's go back to the deposit. So I have a $544,000 purchase. There it is, thank you. I got a $1,000 deposit,
Okay.
right,
Oh, you change, oh.
right?
Uh-huh.
So I put $1,000 in there because my veteran with a kid on each knee is in his fatigues and all that stuff, and like the dog's next to him, I mean, every meme you've ever seen. What's gonna happen to the $1,000 at the end? He's getting, it's a 544, whoops, let's go down just a little bit more, $544,000 purchase. Not 544, 45, 544, what happens to the $1,000 at the end?
It could be applied towards closing costs, taxes.
Comes back,
Sit down.
just comes back, yeah, that's it. The software's smart enough to bracket it right down at the bottom so everybody knows, like, here's my 10 grand to show you that I mean business, and oh, by the way, it's not part of the deal. As soon as this deal closes, Escrow's kicking my check back to me. Or, well, paying them back because they cash those checks,
Right.
right? And that's how that looks when you do that. And VA rates, I don't have any idea what the hell they are. Now, let's say we're working on VA for just a moment, the FHA VA amendatory clause, which is theoretically in here now, right? And it's whoops right at the bottom of the Zipforms, which is ZFX files. It's a file that actually closes where there's a crap ton of PDFs in it. And this one can be a little bit confusing to people at times. FHA amendatory clause says that it's expressly agreed that notwithstanding any other provisions of this contract. Does anybody know what other word you put in, what other 2 words you put in? 3 words you put in instead of notwithstanding, and then it makes more sense. In spite of.
Oh, okay.
It is expressly agreed that in spite of any other provisions of this contract,
In lieu of, in spite
in spite of, yeah, not in lieu of, it doesn't change them, it just doesn't give a shit what they are, right?
Right,
No donut holes for you.
no.
The purchaser shall not be obligated to complete the purchase of the property described herein, and nothing will happen to him, and no deposits are gonna go away, or any of that crap, unless it appraises for not less than. So we start this deal off right there with, come on, buddy.
544.
544. Then I get a counter offer, right? Now it's 560. New clause, new form. Yes, every time until it matches. Every time. It's gotta match. Now the lender's form is probably gonna match in about a month, you'll be fine. But using this form, it needs to match. If you go back for 3 or 4 counters or whatever, the last one of these in there has gotta be the final agreed upon price.
So, does the date stay to the California purchase agreement, does it, or other, so that would go, other would be the counter offer dated, right? So this would keep going, the date
Yeah.
would go with the counter
Yeah,
offer. and
so
this would
like,
just
so when
be
the seller
counter
comes
offer
back
number,
with
blah, blah, blah.
$572,000
Okay.
so you got 2 choices, right?
Yeah.
Every time you volley, send another, and then you're gonna catch
So
some
you'll
crap
just have
about
these
that,
forms
right?
and-
Like, what are you doing with those forms, you idiot? The lender's gonna take care of that. We're taking care of it first.
Right.
Or you can, when you get down to like we're wrapping it up, then stick one in there that's right.
Okay. Really?
You don't need, like, if you're going to 4 counter offers, you don't need 5 FHA. The one that started with the offer and the one that finishes with counter 4 is plenty.
Okay.
Right, because you can always include it like right around the time you're doing the counter, right? Or right after you've signed the counter, it's like, oh, here's one more form,
You know,
right?
it could be after, yeah, once you have an
Yeah.
agreed upon price, you gotta have somebody on the other side that knows what's going on.
Right.
And with this form, who knows, but probably, chances are, you'll be fine. And tell them, okay, so we got that all settled now, I opened escrow this morning, blah, 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 let me shoot you like the final,
Mandatory.
correct.
Right,
amended.
that makes sense.
Yeah, sure, why not?
That's good, yeah, okay.
And everybody signs it,
Yeah, but it
buyers,
has to
sellers,
reference,
agents, everybody.
but it has to reference the final
Yep.
counter, right?
Yeah, the final agreed upon price. So
Right.
if there's one counter, I mean, and if so the guy said, the seller goes, 544, never thought we'd get that much for this dump. That one you wrote's good enough.
Okay.
Except that the lender is about to write about 3 of them. I don't know why. It's just fun with forms, that's all. Cool, okay. Meanwhile, back in the ranch, I know I have the right form, right? You can see those revised dates, California Residential Purchase Agreement 12/18.
Right.
Pretty sure that's the right one. That's the trouble when I go back and use the transaction, because the transaction is a snapshot in time. Once I fill them out, it won't update anymore. I'd have to throw a template in there to update it, so I'm pretty sure that's the last one. We didn't get one in June of this year.
No, because
That's
it
all I needed
updated
there.
the AVID, so it did, yeah. That one was updated.
Bada boom, bada bing, bada bang. Okay, cool.
Dizzy,
Alright, so now it turned into a, yeah,
dizzy.
all the people fell over backwards in their chairs. Alright, verification, down payment, and closing costs, so now we're still in financing on the next page. 3H. 3H and 3J kind of go together. I don't know why they didn't make JI and IJ. I don't know. Because
Yeah.
the pre-approval letter has gotta have the stuff from H and the stuff from J in it to make it legit. That's why both of them have 2 little check boxes there, verification attached, letter attached. Well, the verification for H can be a letter. It can be the same letter. So I don't know why they didn't just, I don't know why. And these you can change. This is not codified or anything. If the forms committee woke up and smelled the coffee and knew what a pre-approval form was supposed to look like, you'd think they'd change it. So 3H, buyer or buyer's lender or loan broker pursuant to paragraph 3J1, so they reference it. Why don't they just make it 3I? Shall within 3 days after acceptance, or maybe it's attached, deliver to seller written verification of buyer's down payment and closing costs. That's part of the pre-approval letter. Buyer's down payment and closing costs. The lender says, I have seen it. I have looked into the abyss and I've seen the money. And then in J, we're just gonna skip I because it's out of order. Buyer shall deliver to seller a letter from buyer's lender or loan broker stating that based on a review of buyer's written application and credit report, that's the other 2 things. I got a written application, I pulled your credit, and I saw your money. A pre-approval letter missing any one of those 3 things, and you'll get them all the time, is not in keeping with the terms of the contract.
Will you say that again? What 3 things?
So in H, you need
Verification.
verification of funds,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And what funds? 2 different things. Down payment
And closing costs.
and closing costs.
Closing
I mean, the closing costs on an FHA deal are gonna be bigger than the down payment. Right, you'll have a $4,500 down payment and $7,500 worth of closing costs potentially. So we wanna see 12 grand. Or we want the lender to at least tell us they saw 12 grand. I mean, that could happen too, just saying.
They would just tell you they can't send you anything that proves that they have the.
No, but on the pre-approval, it's.
Pre-approval
Yeah,
letter's
no,
good
no,
enough, you get the letter, so that's a good point, because on a cash deal, there's no letter from the lender, right? But sometimes I'll use a letter for that, and where will I get that letter?
From a
Black bank.
The bank where the money is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for funds.
Yeah, and you get these like kind of smart ass, snooty highbrow letters when you go, yeah. Hey, tell your banker, you know, they go, you mean my private banker, Wells Fargo, the Ivory Tower, the
Right.
Golden Throne. Yeah, that guy. I need a letter that says you're good for it. To whom this may concern.
Or you can just get.
My
it.
client is a blah, blah, blah,
Like,
and has more money than God.
copies
You
of
don't have to worry
statements
about
and then
it.
I
Good
cross
enough
out
for me?
account
Yeah.
numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know,
I never
do
did
stuff
I
like
wanna see
that.
Yeah, I just send them the account numbers.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
What?
So hey, don't forget, if you're gonna like write on stuff and black it out, you know, you assume a shit ton of responsibility
New word,
right there.
redact.
I'm just saying. Yeah,
Redact.
have them redact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's on them, because if you take a big black marker and you wipe out that whole account number and everything, the home address and everything else you can think of, you don't want anybody to see on that statement, and then scan it, you think that scanner can't read those two different colors of black? You're
Yes, it
wrong. That
does.
number shows
It
right
shows right
up.
back,
Yeah.
yes, it does.
So
you
when
have
you
to
do-
photocopy it.
You put it on the front, and then you put it black crap
Right.
on the back. Now
You
try it. Now try it,
photocopy it.
scanner, you
What?
smart
Did
son
you
of a
know
gun.
that?
No.
If you do it, if you
You know that? If you do it what?
if you redact and you photocopy it and then do it on the
Yeah,
back of the photocopy
5 or 6
and
times,
then
you know,
scan
yeah.
it, then it
Yeah,
doesn't
eventually,
show up.
eventually it might work, right?
That's
Yeah.
what I didn't know.
So basically tell them, make sure the buyer who's gonna send you that stuff takes care of that crap.
Yeah.
And that's the other reason that I'll use a letter from the bank.
That's why there was something on the news recently where they were able to read your stuff. The
Yeah.
government put out all these documents where they had crossed out stuff. What was
And
it?
they put them on the TV, and like you can read it on the
Yeah,
TV, it's
the
like, wow, good
government-
job
yeah.
with a yellow highlighter instead of black marker. Oops.
So you better-
Damn it.
Uh-huh.
Sorry,
The
President
government,
I white
something
it out.
in the government
White out
redacted
works
all
better.
this stuff with
Yeah,
black
I
white it
markers
out,
and then
print it,
released
and
it
then
to the press and
scan
that you
the printed
could read
copy.
through
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Like 2
Rebecca's
months
talking
ago.
about, make
Oh,
it,
that's
degrade it with a
Yeah.
couple of photocopies.
Yeah.
Well, you just do it once, I do it with the whiteout, and then I just.
Yeah, whiteout was meant to
And
cover,
then I
black was
scan
just
it.
meant to make black.
Do you know, trivia question, who invented whiteout?
Mr. White or
That's
Mr.
what I was thinking.
Michael Nesmith's mother. Michael
Oh
Nesmith.
yeah, you know what? I don't know where I heard that, but that's at least the second
Yeah.
time I've heard that.
Michael
And Michael
Nesmith from
Nesmith
the
played with
Monkees.
what famous
His
band?
mother,
Oh.
his mother
And
invented
he played
whiteout.
a double cutaway
I'm gonna
Grinch.
buy a lot of guitars.
She was writing out all that stuff.
It was a bitching guitar. I don't know who played it for him. That was funny, right? That whole monkey story is pretty
Yeah.
funny. So, where were we? Oh,
We digress.
whiting
That's
out
interesting.
and old photocopiers can't see a tear. They can see a cut, but they
You
can't.
can't see a tear.
Okay, so where were we? Oh yeah, so buyer's down payment and verification of cost. My first business partner was a copier mechanic for Xerox. That's how I knew.
It's the lines.
That's how they used to check stuff. Yeah, then you got a shadow from the cut or whatever it is. So buyer's down payment and closing costs. So for a cash deal, a lot of times I'll use a letter
I'm
from
not
the bank.
telling.
And then there's no redacting. I mean, the bank can brag about this guy all they want, and then it's like, I don't know, I didn't verify it. It says the letter's gonna come from either the buyer or the buyer's lender. It ain't coming from the agent, right?
Yeah.
Good. So all you gotta do is read them and make sure that they got, you know, if there's a loan in the deal. Verification of down payment and closing costs. And then down here, states, the lender will state that based on a review of buyer's written application and credit report. So they have to have applied, the lender has to have seen their credit, pulled their credit, and they have to have verified the down payment and closing costs, or the letter's no good. So I'll tell you right now, to save you some grief, Rabobank's letters, mechanics banks now, they're no good. And they will not give you a different one. I don't care what you want. We don't do that. All right, okay, if that's all I'm gonna get, I guess we're just gonna roll with it. You can pressure the loan agent a little bit, you know, how do you like this guy? It's none of your damn business. It's kind of a tough bank to be on the other side from. Done some weird stuff for me though, some like weird, like big acreage, mobile home crap. $900,000. Rabobank financed it, go figure. Shout out to Rabobank, there you go, right? So paragraph I, totally out of order, it's probably ought to be like down here somewhere, it ought to be in, I don't know, 3.3 or something. Appraisal, contingency, and removal, this agreement is, or if I check the box, is not contingent upon a written appraisal of the property by a licensed or certified appraiser, and no less than the purchase price. So, could the buyer, could the VA guy, trick question, getting a loan, check that box? Sure,
He could check it, but
check it, does it have any effect?
nope,
How come?
because VA requires.
The FHA VA amendatory clause trumps that paragraph. Right, because it says, in spite of all the stupid check boxes in your contract, Mr. Realtor, veterans and FHA buyers don't have to buy it if it doesn't appraise. We don't care what happened to that stupid contingency you talked about, in spite of deadlines and everything. If it doesn't appraise, bye-bye. Good to know, right? Good to include that form, right? Yeah. You're not always gonna get it. Now, Zipforms is working really hard to try to make sure when you're the listing agent that the buyer's offer came with a VA FHA amendatory clause. The lender's gonna kick one out pretty soon, not right off the bat, later in, but
When they remember.
that's enough about that. And then they remember and remember and remember. So it could or could not be contingent on the appraisal, and the appraisal contingency is 17 days by default there, or can you change it? Yeah, anytime there's like a yellow space, or if it's still blue in your software, it might be. But whatever you want in there, whatever you think the seller can choke down. Because when you're a buyer's agent writing offers, you gotta remember who you're working for, right? You're being honest and fair with the seller, but you place the buyer's interest above all others. You are a fiduciary. You're like a food taster. It's like, I got that, no wait, I got it. I'd probably be dead. Hey, look at that, look at the head on that one.
Oh my
We're
goodness.
gonna take a small Noah break.
Wow.
Hello, everybody.
Take a normal size
The
Noah
prodigal
break.
son returned.
I know.
For all of you who forgot, that's Noah. No, it's the default on the appraisal contingency. Let's just put him on the spot right off the bat.
Default is 17 days, loan is 21.
21 days, right? Could you match them up if you wanted to by changing the box? Sure. Could if you wanted to. And so the appraisal contingency is a little bit shorter because it usually happens before the loan contingency, before they're done processing the loan, right? So there you have that. One of the most important things I think to know about loan contingency, because everybody here is experienced. So they're in 3J2. Buyer shall act diligently and in good faith to obtain the designated loans. Buyer shall act diligently and in good faith to obtain the designated loans. What designated loan? Where was it designated? Page 1. What kind of loan did we designate in this one?
Yeah, cash.
VA loan.
VA.
Yeah. Right? So that's where I'm going with that, right? So let's say it's an all cash deal. Or let's say it's conventional,
80%.
80% LTV, 20% down.
Yeah.
Pretty conventional.
Convention.
20% down. It's easier to read. Buyer shall act diligently and in good faith to obtain the 20% down, 80% financing loan I talked about on page 1.
It's 10%.
Buyer's qualification for the loan specified, it always goes back to, like I told you what kind of loan I was getting. So if they go get a different kind of loan, is the loan contingency gone? Yes? Bye.
Oh, so it is?
Yep.
Yes. You know, my first deal with LD, I had the buyer and he was going to change it to a VA loan.
Right,
So
that was
it's
my
right.
example, like we
Yeah.
got 20% down conventional, now we're going
Yeah,
VA.
Exactly. So I
Seller is relying on buyer's representation of the type of financing. Seller has agreed to a specific close date purchase price and to sell the buyer in reliance on buyer's covenant concerning financing. Buyer shall go get that financing. Seller has no obligation to cooperate with buyer's efforts to obtain any financing other than what he put on page 1.
So if I interrupt, if it's mid-escrow and they go, hey, shoot, you know what, this loan's getting a little shaky, we need to get a second, or we gotta do, they have to change.
So what do you have to do? You gotta go back to the table, right? You gotta get everybody to agree that this is now the newly specified financing. That way your loan contingency is intact.
Well, let's say
The
they-
seller is now obligated to cooperate
If
with
they
you.
attain the new loan and you're in escrow, does, like you were saying, their loan contingency is gone, is it still gone even if they obtained a new loan?
Yeah, you have
Well,
to
if they
amend
got the new
contract.
loan, like they're ready to fund the loan, do they need a contingency anymore?
No.
They got the money,
They
what do they
got the
care,
money,
right?
But if they don't, then you have to.
But they can't use that as a way to back out of the contract.
Right.
Eh,
Seller has no obligation to cooperate with buyer's efforts to obtain any financing other than that specified in the agreement, and the availability of any such alternate financing does not excuse buyer from the obligation to purchase the property and close escrow as specified in the agreement.
But the
So,
seller doesn't have to agree to your new terms.
right, yeah, so if
So
you
then
need
you're
new
doing
terms,
this.
you probably ought to
You put
tell
yourself at risk.
somebody, right?
Yeah. You
So
put
what do you
yourself at
do?
risk.
What form?
Amend.
Do you just use it like an amendment to the contract?
Yeah,
That's
you
the
amend the
term I was
contract.
waiting to hear, you're amending the contract.
Yes.
We addend offers, we amend the contract. So you amend the contract, propose it, I mean, have a little dialogue,
This is specific form.
Yeah,
Give the seller the information they need to help them make the decision.
yeah, and it kind of
Without,
depends on
you know,
how far
selling out
out
the
you
farm.
are. I mean, how much at risk are you? I mean, if you're like 10 days from closing and it's pretty much a sure thing and you're not gonna, it's not gonna affect your closing or anything like that, and you're ready to close. Like with
Everyone's
the
working
interest
towards the
rate,
same goal.
because your interest rate is part of your loan terms too. It says.
Only if you put it in.
Yeah, well, it actually has,
Don't
because
you
it
say
says
There's
not
on
a
there,
blank.
then?
it does reference
Not
your.
to exceed.
Not to
Or,
exceed.
yeah, and it does reference in there something about, doesn't it say something about qualifying at the,
That's right. So there's buyer stated financing, and I want to talk about the.
right, based on the qualifying rate, not the initial loan rate. About the pre-approval letter, it says, so your loan application shall be based on
Oh,
the qualifying rate.
If any
Not
loan
the initial
specified
loan
is an
rate.
adjustable rate,
Yeah,
it's based on the qualifying rate, because sometimes
So-
those are different.
yeah.
So you might, with an adjustable, you might have a little out there. With a
Yeah,
fixed, probably
but-
not. If you write something in though, which is why we write
Yeah,
something in.
4%.
And we never put in what people used to put in, which is like best available, like, what if the best
Yeah.
available next
Don't put
week was
anything in if you're gonna do
16.5?
that. Ew.
You better get another job, Jackson. You better figure out some other way to get out of this deal.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening this year. I don't see that happening next year. I don't
So
see
did you
that
have to
happening.
amend it? Did it go through?
I'll be out of here by
I
the time
did,
that
but the
happens.
agent who'd been around forever said, I said, I'll send you the form, and she said, don't worry about it, I'll just tell him. And I said, no, I'll send you the form.
Wants a buy-in. So was that smart on
Yeah.
the other one's part? Was like,
No.
yeah, no, that's good.
No.
Yeah, we didn't agree to any of your new crap. Yeah. So which side were you on? Buyers?
The buyers,
Yeah. So the listing agent is like, yeah, don't bother sending me a form.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
let them know. And now the seller is not obligated. Well
Right,
played,
right.
listing agent.
Yeah,
Well,
but,
Yeah. But
That wasn't very nice in good faith though, was it?
honest and fair dealing, I don't know. It was your idea to go get a new loan. I'm just saying. Yeah, but don't let her get away with it. Did I say her?
It
Yeah.
was my first deal.
I thought you said
Oh,
LZ.
and
I
by
gotta
the
stop
way,
listening for the
by
initials
the
because
way,
we're
I
live,
had,
direct, and
I have to
global
tell you
America.
something that happened last night.
Uh-oh.
So here's another thing while we're at it, because we were talking about down payments and closing costs and all that stuff. So when the banks take all the houses back, like they did in 2007 to
Not
like
again.
9, right in there, and every offer you ever write is an FHA offer because it's either FHA or cash. There's almost like, for some reason, no middle ground on the bank repos, man, on the REOs. Kind of weird. It was a weird market. So you're writing a crap ton of FHA loans. And FHA borrows, a lot of times, they can scrape together that down payment, 3.5%, generally speaking, of the purchase price. They don't have the other 10 grand for closing costs, right? Often. So a lot of times, we'll go ask the seller for the closing costs, right? Seller to contribute 3% of the blah, 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 or whatever, you just write it on page 1 where it says other financing terms, don't bury it in the contract, put it on page 1 in case you were wondering. Page 1's a great place for it. If it won't fit, on page 1 write see addendum, put it on the addendum. Any credit to buyer from any source for closing or other costs that is agreed to by the parties shall be disclosed to buyer's lender. So you want this done and that done, and you want credit for closing costs, and you want credit for, I don't know, the roof or something like that. You can't do anything without telling the lender. And if the lender goes, you know what, and they'll usually tell you, make that all closing costs. Don't start talking about what
What it's
crappy
for.
shape this house is in,
Right.
and how you need another 10 because the windows are falling out of the frames. Let's just call it closing costs, and we're probably okay. And oh, by the way, you have to stop at about 7,500. Because that's all the credits the lender can make fit in this deal. That's why you have to tell them. Because if you tell them, or I should say when you tell them, and they tell you what credits you can have and what you can't, the contractual credits, so the thing the buyer and seller agreed upon and everybody was happy with until they told the lender, the contractual credit shall be reduced to the lender allowable credit. So if you got 10 grand out of the seller and the seller says you're capped at 7,500, that's all the credits I can do on this, well, that's it. And there ain't no $3,500 or $2,500 spiff to the buyer or anything. The seller keeps it. I've
But you
seen
could-
people do that.
You-
We want a $15,000 credit for a bunch of crap, but we think it's gonna cost us about 8 grand. Yeah,
Yeah.
So
we're
what's
just
the
gonna
percent
make
then?
7 grand. Well, it says right in there, you can't do that. Stop doing
Well,
that.
you could buy the rate down with
3%.
that closing cost.
What's that?
Yeah, like, whatever's cool with the lender, you can do. Yeah, and that's the thing, you can tell them, okay, seller's gotta pay a point and buy the rate down. The lender goes, that's cool, yeah, you can do that. As long as the lender says it's okay.
Yeah.
And you always get the language for the contract from the lender. Let them write it.
Yes.
Cause their underwriter's gonna read it, and you're gonna tell them, I didn't write that frickin' whistle dink over here that's doing the loan did. Yes.
So Gary,
Where do you ask for the credit to closing costs?
on that first page.
Okay, so-
Other financing.
Additional
terms.
financing. terms.
Oh,
3E, additional financing terms, right? And there's only like a line and a half, and it doesn't always fit. So you can't always put the addendum there, yes.
The other
Okay.
Don't
thing
go
is,
anywhere.
the other thing is like on an FHA loan, they are required to put the minimum down, 3.5%. So if they ask for, say, $10,000 or $12,000 in closing costs, they cannot apply it to that. They still have to make that minimum.
Right, yeah, the down payment is,
So
and that's gotta be,
Yeah, then-
maybe there's gonna be a
that's why you're
program
gonna
out there
use it to
someday,
lower
and
the-
maybe there is right now, where the seller can contribute to the down payment, but it ain't FHA, yeah.
Yeah.
So Gary, what is
Yeah.
is it 3% that's the maximum that you can apply toward, 3% of the loan, is that the maximum that could be applied towards credits at closing?
Different on every loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them go as high as 6.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
it's
I've had those guys tell me, no, you're good. No, we're like, I'm going like, we have got to be in the stratosphere of credits on this too. No, you're good,
Every
keep
lender,
going.
every
program,
lender,
it's
every
actually every
program.
Every program's different.
Yeah, loan program.
Every
Yep.
loan program.
Now, we used to tell borrowers back in the day, many years ago, when they were trying to figure out how much money they needed, we used to kind of just blanket 3.25% of the loan amount. It's almost never that high anymore, but it used to be all the time. To borrow 300 grand, it would take you 10 grand. I don't think it does anymore. More like 6 probably. But lender knows, and everybody knows, the buyer knows. By the time they go get the loan and they get all their truth in lending garbage, you get that stuff up front, and then you get the CD later, they know what it's gonna cost them. But the lender's got that right at their little fingertips.
so if you have the buyer and you put under other terms, seller to contribute 3% of closing costs, wouldn't the selling agent or the listing agent look at that and think, well, I don't know what your closing costs are. We need to put a cap on that.
you have to put an amount,
Karen,
physical amount, the number amount.
You
like
you need to
10,000.
put an amount.
Up
You know what,
to.
that's the best way,
You don't
yeah,
need
like,
to,
like
but
a not
I'm
to
saying,
exceed
wouldn't
thing.
they
Not to
counter
exceed.
that?
But
I would
you-
think they
Not
would
to
counter that.
exceed.
Not to exceed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you can put not to exceed, you could put a percentage,
Right.
cause now we have
Because
that
I've
new
seen
paragraph
that,
since
and
about
I've
2010.
countered, And I'm
that
like,
says,
their closing costs were like 13,000. I'm like, you know, something
Well,
like
it's the
that.
same
well,
thing with
they can
those
ask for
section one
whatever they want.
clearance.
Yeah.
You can put a cap.
Right, okay.
They can ask for whatever they want, and
what is
that
the
lender
typical-
limit on allowable credits paragraph will cap it.
Yeah.
You don't
Okay.
need to cap it.
So what is the typical closing costs right now? Because
don't know,
I've had a
Elizabeth?
lot of,
Yeah.
Well, it
Uh,
depends.
No one here
Cash
does
buyers.
loans, so we don't know.
Huh?
But if you figure
It's
3%,
usually-
you're
it's
probably
usually
high.
2% is the average, but you have to make sure that
of
you
the
put-
loan.
Of the loan. You have to
Okay.
make sure
Oh, the loan
that-
amount, right?
The loan
Okay.
amount. But you have to make sure that you put recurring and non-recurring closing costs in order for you to get more money for your client.
Right. Can you put that right there? on the
Yeah,
other
that's where
terms?
you.
That's where it
Yeah.
goes, yeah.
Okay.
Seller to contribute $10,000 to recurring and non-recurring closing
Right there.
costs. And you'll get
Okay.
that language where,
Well,
From the
I've,
lender.
I've
from
seen
the
that.
lender, get it from the lender. The lender will tell you, and they'll remind you to put in non-recurring, because they're gonna tell you, if you don't put that in, I can't do it.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean recurring. Non-recurring, that's the cheap one. Recurring, that's the one that gives them a little more room.
Okay.
I don't see how the hell that works. Anyway, you're gonna give me money for property taxes for like forever? Like what?
But it's always good to always ask the lender too, to give you an estimate, like a good faith estimate. Because depending on the day of close of escrow, they might collect 6 months of property taxes. If you close on a certain day, it might be 2
Yeah.
months, so it can vary, like it can be less or it can be more. So it's always good to just kinda get that good faith estimate.
When's the cheapest day to close an escrow for a buyer in any given month? First week of the month or end of the month? End of the month, right?
Yeah, because,
Because you make mortgage payments in arrears, you didn't live there that month.
yeah,
You like moved in December 31st, yeah. So your prepaid interest is like 1 day. And usually, you can push that out into about the first 5 days of the next month or so. Every program's different, and blah, blah, blah. But then when you're trying to hit that last day of the month, if you miss it by a couple days, you're probably still okay. But when a buyer is like really tight on money, then the end of the month, but the thing that doesn't account for is, like Elizabeth just said, is proration of property taxes. If you close escrow like the day before, the second half installment is due, or the second installment is due, or so, you're probably getting stuck for that whole thing. So you wanna kinda watch that. And I've seen buyers that were getting really tight on stuff, wind up with about 2 months worth of prorated property tax they couldn't handle. We had to go back to the table, cause we're closing on the wrong day. Yep, that's the trouble with that, when you're working in that, or the challenge in it, I guess I should say, working in that entry level, FHA, all that stuff, everybody's freaking broke. So you gotta know what's going on and pay attention and work with the lender to say, okay, you gotta close me, you gotta help me figure out what's the cheapest day what day can these guys afford to close? And I gotta either push my escrow out there, or I gotta hurry it up a little bit or something. Yeah, it's all,
You also
that's good
have the-
stuff, that's really
You also
important.
have a fee
I love
for
it.
mortgage insurance if you have an FHA, so that gets applied too, so. you make
Yeah,
sure
and
you have
FHA
that.
got to be where FHA was like the worst loan in the world, cause the mortgage insurance was so
Yeah.
damn high, so they kinda pulled that back a little bit, yeah. Lot to it, yeah, lot to being a buyer's agent. Being a listing agent, all you do is yell at them cause they're not getting the loan. It doesn't matter to you damn people. Got no money? It's a stupid lender. Quit using that damn Quicken loan. God damn it. Dirty so-and-so. Rocket mortgage. Yeah, really. All right, look at that, 1111. That's probably what
Think
that
of
text
that
was.
language.
Right?
It's good for lunch.
Yeah, right there you go. Cool, okay, any other questions or anything else? Me, I'll stay here all day and we'll just take it to lunch and blah, blah, blah. But if we're all good, then we'll actually go to page 3. Or we're good, or 2.5.
the amendment, that's the
Next
Yeah, it's
form
not
for
just a
that.
plain.
We'll
old
finish it
amendment.
before
Oh, it's a
Thanksgiving,
change in
though.
terms.
That's what I would think.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, it's a change in
Thank you,
terms.
Gary.
My
Thank
whole
you.
deal.
Gary.
Thank you all for being.
Gary, is there a
Here's your dollar
specific,
for clapping.
a specific form, a specific amendment for changing loan terms?
No, I don't think so, just the amendment, right? The amendment to
Well, you
existing
went over it to
agreement.
me, but
Which is
I
really
was
nice,
surprised
cause you
that
can
was
reject or accept
Yeah, right, instead of going,
Okay, here's a form, roll with it.
right, so if you do an addendum, like,
And the new client
and the
comes
seller
in.
goes, everything's cool except like that thing and that thing, and what do? Counter it?
Last night, she's like.
You can counter that amendment, that's exactly right, thank you for doing that.
So
We
you
actually
could
looked
change
at the house.
the price
And
of
we
it.
looked at Trilogy,
The seller could
because that's where
also
this is
say,
going.
no, I'm gonna change
And
the
so we
terms.
were considering this house.
Well, the seller stuck with the initial terms,
Yeah,
so if the buyer says, I need to change it,
yeah.
and then the seller has to say yes or no to the changes, generally speaking, because everything else is probably okay, it's probably